All right, and welcome to the Planet X podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
And this week we're going to be a little bit all over the place. We're having a topic we're sticking with, but this week we're going to bounce around a little bit. What we're going to start off with was yesterday was the mid-season premiere of The Walking Dead. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that it was probably one of the best episodes in the entire series.
I agree with you. I was going to say I was sitting on the edge of the couch almost the whole time, and you just didn't, even some of the stuff that I kind of knew was going to happen.
Yeah.
The series has been, with reading the book, with reading the comic, and kind of having an idea what direction they're going to go. But they kind of started off, right, with the, how's this going to take? And they gave you enough happy shit, I think, to counteract the shit, the stuff that really the impactful stuff with killing off characters and plot setup.
Yeah. You kind of.
We'll give this a little just in case anybody wasn't aware. We're going to talk about what happened. There will be spoilers. So if you're listening to this,
there will be spoilers.
The mid-season premiere, I guess shut us off for now and come back later. But I think right from the get-go, even with that opening scene with the...
Shall we say it started off with a bang?
Yeah. With the... rough crowd. Yeah, that scene with the protectors, I really didn't know what was going to happen. It was...
Yeah, because, reading a graphic novel, obviously, two of the characters that were in that scene aren't in the graphic novel at all. And one of them was, at one point, was killed by the Saviors. And you really didn't know where they were going to go with this. And this was what they had teased at the end of the first half, was they gave you this little, couple minute, prelude to the second half of the season. And I immediately was on the edge of my seat, not knowing what was going to happen. But it resolved itself in probably one of the most epic ways it could have resolved itself, with the guy kind of pulling the head of the head of the biker group pulling the guns on Sasha and Abraham, thinking that okay, at least one of them isn't walking away, and Daryl firing an RPG at him.
Yeah, it built that tension. It was Nicotero's directed it, and I guess Nicotero knows these movies. He knows the genre, and he built the tension and then eased you up, and then built the tension again real quick, and then gave you that oh shit moment. I guess is the best way to, with Daryl blowing the guys up with a missile launcher, which is a little extreme, but it was a fun way to start the show. It was definitely, it's with being a fan of the show and knowing that, and being a fan of the comic and knowing that it can get you into some dark shit. And I'm like, are they going to start this off on this downbeat? And I'm like, all right, here we go. Strap yourself in. And then they gave you a big killing everybody with a goddamn missile launch, having a fucking bazooka. It was all right. That was pretty fucking cool. Let's get, let's go on to the next thing.
It was cool. It kind of, in a way, it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because, and it was really, it just gave you that, oh shit moment that, you didn't expect. You're really watching it and going like, okay, one of these three isn't walking away from this, and that wasn't the case.
It definitely felt like some of the 80s schlocky stuff. Like it was very trauma movie type of scene, like a Toxic Avenger or
definitely
Class of Nukem High or something like that, of somebody supporting a gun at you talking shit, so you shoot them with a bazooka. It had that fun, over the top thing that sometimes this series doesn't go for. So it was a nice kind of change of pace. You know, it was definitely, it was a scene that you expected out of Z Nation.
Yeah.
More than Walking Dead. And it worked. You know, it was humorous, and it was done in a serious enough way so it stayed in the contents of the show. I'm sure there's going to be people that are like, that was too comical or too absurdist of a death. You know, for there are going to be people that hate it, but I enjoyed it because it was a little bit of fun after, you know, with a show that has so much intensity, and the rest of the intensity that they dropped on you through the course of the series. Because then after that, you get 3 characters off the hook there, and then you have 6 characters, 8 characters walking, you know, doing that the daisy chain through the
zombies or the walkers.
You can say zombies. You know, it's okay. We're not on the show.
I know, but you know,
I know you want.
I'm trying to be cool.
You want to be included, like as it.
But they never say the word zombie. But they're zombies. But you know, the one thing, like I was really hoping that the way the mid-season ended with them leaving the house in that, you know, hand in hand, and that stupid kid, you know, calling out to his mom. I really figured like that was where the shit was going to happen, like immediately, and we didn't get that, and I was kind of surprised. For a few minutes anyway.
You know, yeah, they gave you a little bit before they took out that family brutally. I knew they were gonna. I had a feeling they were gonna get it for a few things, partly because of the comic, because that's around the time that they die in the comic.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I know, the Monster Mania convention in Cherry Hill, 2 of the mom and who's the little kid, the little whiny kid,
Sam.
Yeah, Sam are both going to be at Monster Mania. But I mean, they always get a ton of Walking Dead people in live and dead, you know, active on the show or not active on the show. And but when I saw their names on the list for whatever reason, I'm like, oh, they're not going to make it. And that's what happened.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. Like I knew, you know, you kind of, you know, they foreshadowed that, and they've been foreshadowing it with this kid the entire season, where, you know, he's just not made for that world. He's just, you know, he's scared, and he's not, you know, you knew he was going to be Zombie Chow at some point. But I knew in the comic, I knew that Ron and Jesse die because Sam isn't in the comic. But I was thinking, well, all right, maybe they'll take out, you know, Ron, and they'll leave Jesse, because they really had kind of fleshed the character out a little more in the show than they did in the, so I thought she might have been a little safe, but she was not.
Yeah.
And their deaths are squarely on Carol.
Yeah, there was
because Carol,
this episode definitely kind of leaned on Carol as being after all this, Carol's been right. Carol's showing us the way. Carol is the one that who's straightening things out for us here. And then it turns out Carol,
she kind of caused things to get a little fucked up, because, you know, she was the one that had told Sam, you know, about the monsters, that the monsters were going to get you. And the monsters got him. He stood there. He was kind of having like, you know, like a panic attack basically as they're walking through, you know, through this horde. and he sees a little zombie kid and freezes.
Yeah.
And then probably one of the greatest deaths in the entire show, a zombie just bites down on this kid's head.
Yeah, that was rough. And, they did, you definitely got the violence towards children, I guess, that I always thought this show was going to, it's tough to say that when they shot a little girl in the first episode, but this was definitely the most graphic deaths of children that have been on the show. I think the creation of the Sam character, or the split, because in the book there was only one kid.
Yeah, Ron was the only kid in the book.
Ron was the only kid in the book, but also in the book, Ron and Carl are much younger. They're closer to being Sam's age than the teenagers that they are. So it was a way to I liked that they kind of made two characters out of one, that you got a little bit of the innocence of some of that stuff that they haven't been able to portray in the Carl character, because the kid's getting ready to be about 28 years old now.
Yeah, and that was, that's the thing. They really had to kind of he sprouted. We've talked about this before, where he just kind of sprouted up, and it's only supposed to have been like, a year or so in the world, but
yeah, he's big as fuck. I was laughing when
he's almost as tall as Rick.
Because what and then what it leads up to is Carl gets shot in the face. The car must have hit a bump or something, because I shot Carl in the face. Car didn't hit no motherfucking bump. So anyway, sorry, I'm gonna go into Pulp Fiction. So you get the two kids Sam gets eaten. The mom gets eaten
because she just starts screaming as she's watching her youngest get eaten.
She loses her shit. Rick's got to chop her arm off, so she lets go of Carl. Then Ben, am I saying the name right? Yeah, Ron. I don't know who the fuck is Ben.
Han Solo's kid.
Ben, that's it. Okay. So Ron, he and then he goes to shoot Rick, and Michonne stabs him in the chest. Runs him through with the sword, and he winds up shooting Carl in the face.
That was fun. I knew Carl was going to get shot, because again, they're starting to follow the comic a little more. In the comic, it was the Deanna character that accidentally shoots Carl, but the Deanna character was a guy, and that was a role reversal thing.
Yeah.
In the comic. But I totally did not expect Michonne to run him through with the katana. That was just like, that blew my mind.
Yeah, it was different than that was something I didn't expect. But to get that type of brutality and dead seriousness in this scene, and just the way it built, and the things with the doctor and the wolf.
Yeah.
And again, that led up to another part where you're like, oh, Carol did the wrong thing. Maybe, where so many people are like, you got to kill that person because, it ain't going to work out. And everybody was like, oh, Morgan's so wrong. And I guess Carol's always look on the dark side of things has backfired.
Yeah. Although she did kind of save Denise in a way, I guess, by eventually shooting the wolf, but at that point he wasn't really a threat.
Yeah, and he died heroic.
He died heroically. He got shot and kind of, took on some of the walkers to keep him away from Denise, which was good because they need a doctor, because there's a kid that got shot in the face.
Yeah. Shot Marvin in the face. and, you know, and it just kept building, and then the way they did the townspeople uniting to, you know, behind Rick and Michonne to save the town and reclaim it,
which I thought was a great scene as well.
And you got Maggie and Glenn back together. You got
although Glenn escaped death once again.
Glenn was in that, you know, they gave you that point. I have a feeling they're just gonna do this all season from now on. That it is just good that Glenn is gonna be near Kenny McCormick, like the whole season, like early South Park, like what's gonna kill Glenn this episode, or what's almost gonna kill Glenn this episode.
We know what's going to kill Glenn.
Well, we'll see. There's a lot of.
I think they're going in a different direction with that, but
I do too. There's enough other characters now. You know, there's a lot of characters, so they could, you know, it could be somebody else. I almost feel like the impending Glenn death that we're all waiting for might wind up being Carol.
Possibly. I'm you know, I thought possibly Carol. Another thought of mine is in that role, that impending death could be Morgan.
Yeah.
And then there's the obvious one. If they really want to get the fans and get people talking and really upset people, that it's Daryl at the end that gets it, which is a distinct possibility.
Yeah, it's definitely a distinct possibility. But I feel I almost feel like there's too much money behind it.
Absolutely.
He's in the video game thing. He's the and Norman Reedus will kind of like do anything for a buck type of guy.
Yeah.
You know, not that it's a bad thing. You know, he's open and willing to things. I think Andrew Lincoln. I think Abraham Lincoln was a hell of a president. I just want to bring that up this President's Day. But Andrew Lincoln, a British man who plays a character on Walking Dead, he's, I guess, takes his acting a little bit more seriously, you know, and Norman Reedus is just like, oh yeah, whatever. I'm in a video game. I'm in a silly movie. I'm doing some, you know, I'm goofing around. I'm of a different nature. So I think he's too much of a mascot for the show. You know,
I don't disagree with that, but you know, I just on the flip side of that though, there's that, you know, you got to start feeling like people, like you have that main group, and I mean that's where, you know, that's how could fill that role, where like you have the main, you know, the handful of Atlanta people that are left. You want it to happen to one of them.
Mm.
You know, but I do think like I feel like Carol would be a good choice. I feel like, and almost in a way of Morgan giving himself up. You know, the whole, because he refuses to take a life and all that he'll, you know, that could be where he, you know, he would be the one.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's such a up in the air. It's there's so many possibilities, and they had just also have that ability to fuck with the people that know.
Yeah,
you know, that there's probably a desire to want to do something different, and then also that like, oh, you guys think this is coming, we're gonna give you this. I'm eager with anticipation, I guess is the best way to describe it.
And as far as that happening, I mean, what is it, another 8 episodes? It's like 8 episodes the second half of the season.
I'm not sure.
I think it's like another 8 episodes. So after this, we've got another 7 episodes, and I'm really hoping that this storyline that is coming, that they don't rush it, because that's kind of what it feels like. It feels like since they got to Alexandria, we all know what's. Oh, everybody that's read the book knows what's coming. They cast the character, so we know it's coming. But I wouldn't be disappointed if the only mention of Negan was last night. The rest of this season,
I think I agree with you. I kind of like that it's just a slow build. I half expected when they had the big fire pit explosion thing that they were going to cut back to guys looking through a binocular.
Yeah.
From a distance and seeing it and reporting back.
I felt that too. And we still might get that. But yeah. I'm really hoping that they just let that build and just let it go. And maybe kind of like what they did with the Wolves a little bit, where they, the Wolves not far, and you seeing these references to them at different points, but don't have the character show up until next season.
Well, I know they already cast them. I thought
they cast them, but I don't know. And the casting was announced recently, like within the past month. So I don't know. I don't know how the filming goes for this. I think that this half of the season's been shot already. Or maybe kind of do like a reveal like they did with Morgan or with Michonne, at the end of the season, kind of give a little bit of a reveal. But I don't really know if I want to see him right away. And even I wouldn't be opposed to them dragging it out a little into next season too.
Yeah, take time, but I guess don't get boring. So,
yeah, I'm not saying because I think for that character and that storyline to work, the Alexander really come together. We saw that a little bit last night. When Rick ran out into the horde, and everybody came out of their houses to help. We saw that, but for it to have the impact that it's going to have, and for it to go in the direction that it's, we're figuring it's going to go, I think they need to take their time and let it build a little bit. Maybe a mention here and there, but don't reveal the character. Don't have it end, don't have the season ended with that scene or whatever. So I guess we'll find out. But yeah, last night was probably the best episode of the entire run so far.
Yeah, I agree with you. I
think this season's been solid. And I liked what they did with the first half, where it basically took place. It was 8 episodes. It kind of took place over the course of like 24 hours.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I'm looking. I've enjoyed the show pretty much since the beginning. I'm looking, like I said, excited, anticipating. I'm psyched that it's back again. I got something to look forward to on Sundays now that football's over. It's a fun show.
Yeah,
and I'm hoping to enjoy it. I'm hoping they don't get me too upset with who they're gonna, having to kill characters off, but they're gonna keep killing characters off because that's what has to happen. Otherwise,
Yeah. You need to feel a little unsafe during this show.
Yeah, and they did a great job with that this episode.
Yeah, and like another point was when Rick left the house after, you know, getting Carl to the infirmary. That kind of left me a little like, okay, what's going to happen here? You know, I didn't know what was going to happen there.
Yeah.
Kind of nice where I didn't feel like, okay, you know, it's Rick's safe. He walked out of that house. I didn't feel that. I didn't feel like he was safe.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You know, so it's going to definitely be an interesting second half of the season, I think. And see where it goes. So enough of The Walking Dead. Now you brought up a good good topic to discuss in the pre-show.
Yeah, and I don't know what I guess it was just something that thinking about, you know, during the course of my day and reading the news, watching the news, hearing whatever, and just that phenomenon, I guess, that happens when you become disappointed in an entertainer or a celebrity. Or, you know, I'm going to say entertainer because celebrity means such weird things now.
Celebrity, the term celebrity has definitely taken on a.
Yeah, there's people that are famous for nothing, and they get, you know, their news about them gets battered around, and who the hell cares? But and those, I guess, those type of people that are just celebrity, you're never like, nobody's ever like, oh, Kim Kardashian said something stupid. I'm really disappointed that she, you know, didn't think that through. It's like her saying something stupid is what you kind of expect. You know, that's kind of that I guess that's the curse of reality television or whatever that is. But I was thinking, I guess what really set me off on this was a couple of weeks ago, the thing with Phil Anselmo of Pantera, Down, Superjoint Ritual. He was at a concert. It was one of the it was Dime Fest, honoring his former bandmate Dimebag Darrell, who had been murdered. He at the end of the show, he stood up, gave the Nazi salute, and yelled "White Power" to the crowd. And again, this is Phil Anselmo, who has always done things to garner some attention, who has had issues with drugs and alcohol for years. But this was just such a out of the blue weirdness, and just why? For me to sit here and be like, here's a guy who's I've paid to go see and whose music I enjoy. And then for something like this, it's like, wow, you know, you just shaking your head like, I don't get it. And it makes you like that person in their work a little bit less. You know, I heard a Pantera song. I was listening to my music. I had everything on random, and a Pantera song came on, and that's what I thought about. I didn't think about, hey, I love this whole album. I love this song. It was fucking Phil and doing something stupid like that. And I gave some lame excuses, and it drummed up a ton of debate, I guess, in that heavy metal world. And I've always kind of been a big proponent of the media, and Hollywood always shows metal guys as being very intolerant, kind of moronic, simpletons and barbarian type of guys. And
then he goes and does something like this.
Yeah, he goes and does something like this, and it helps stamp that. But I always think about how, like, Judas Priest, Rob Halford came out, and everybody's like, still love Halford, still love Priest, don't care if he's gay, whatever.
Yeah.
To have this with, and then, you know, thinking about that, it was the same. It reminded me of Bill Cosby. And here's a guy who I've probably the first stand-up special that I ever watched back to front was Bill Cosby. We've talked about this before, on a podcast. And when you think of, and Cosby had the stand-up, he had the Cosby Show, he had Fat Albert, He had all the picture pages.
Hey, I was gonna say picture pages.
You know, there's a ton of good. There's a ton of entertaining things. There's a ton of educational entertaining things that Cosby has done. And then when you find out that he's a serial rapist or a possible serial rapist over the course of almost 50 years, and you're like, oh my God, this guy that I've loved. Not only are you just disappointed, you're like, he's disturbed. It's a psychosis.
Yeah.
And there's these things, you know, and now these things that you've enjoyed your whole life, you look at it and you're like, does it make you like it? I guess it affects things. It doesn't make.
Well,
it shouldn't
going.
Bill Cosby himself, the stand-up special, any less funny. And
it doesn't make it any less funny, but in the same, I'm using that as an example. Last summer, I had been in Jack's, or 2 summers ago or whatever. I'd been in Jack's Music Shop in Red Bank, and I was just poking around the comedy section, and they had a bunch of Bill Cosby stand-up CDs, and I bought a good chunk of them. Some of them, like one of them to Russell, my brother, whom I slept with, was like, I listened to that on vinyl as a kid. And I loved that. And I mean, and I had like a stack of Bill Cosby records, and I bought most of them on CD. And since these allegations came out, I've not been able to listen to them. And I'm not saying he did. I'm not saying he did. That it's that kind of weird, And
I think this goes more like with Phil Anselmo, and Hulk Hogan's another one that with the things that Hulk Hogan said on that tape, and the racial stuff, the racist stuff, however you want to put it. Again, that's just words.
Yeah.
And compared to the Bill Cosby thing, people are there's been a lot of Facebook memes about putting Bill Cosby and Hulk Hogan as being these disappointments. Still, Hulk Hogan didn't go and burn a cross on somebody's lawn, or he didn't go and attack black people. He said some stupid, dumb shit. Okay, yeah. Whatever, whether, I ain't even going to get into, attempting to trying to defend him on any of it, but it was words. It was, and there was an issue with what he said, and companies who are paying him, who have sponsors, who have whatever, they have I guess they kind of have the right to be like, we don't want to be associated with you right now over these issues. With the Bill Cosby thing, it's, a criminal action, and it affected people.
Yeah.
And some of it, you can almost blame some of it on, I guess, the system, because you go back to the 60s and probably even the 70s, rape allegations, especially date rape allegations, weren't taken seriously like they are now. If you were somebody who had gone up to a man's hotel room and you came down and were like, oh, he raped me, they would have been like, you went up to his hotel room. Obviously you're a whore.
What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, it was, not that makes it right because of the culture of the time.
No,
it's just I don't know if it added into it. It's tough to say. Well, he came from a different time, and that's the same thing where, like, oh, here's an older guy who's got these, is spouting off racist things and saying, calling people gooks and niggers and things like that. And, like, oh, he comes from a different time. That's my grandfather. He's from back, that doesn't necessarily defend it. But again, it's just words, as opposed to, guy be like, oh yeah, he raped a couple women, but he's from a different time. You were allowed to do that back then.
No.
Like, no. You should have never been allowed to do any of that. And that was, I've always, whenever, I guess, rape allegations get brought up in the news and they start talking about the credibility of the woman, and their, you know, her, is she promiscuous? And I never understood. You know, it's one thing to try and find out if she's a liar, but then just be like, oh, she sleeps with a ton of people. And like, that doesn't mean, just because she's a whore doesn't mean she can't be raped.
That doesn't have anything. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. That just blows my mind. Like, you just have, that's the reaction you get from these people that try to defend the celebrity.
Yeah, and you know, it's, I guess if it's one of those, it's weird. Like, if you showed up at my house tomorrow and be like, hey, I got some tickets to go see Bill Cosby live, I'd be like, oh, I think I want to go see Bill Cosby live. But I might be at a different point of like, hey, Bill Cosby wants to come over your house and have dinner.
I don't know if I'd let him in my house.
I can get lids for my drinks.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you know, and again, an entertainer, I guess it's my, you know, somebody lives their life, and if somebody wants to have an attitude towards something that I disagree with, I don't have to enjoy their, you know, I don't have to purchase their stuff or, you know, fund their career anymore. You know, that's my decision. And with some people, I find some things easier to forgive, and with time it'll pass. You know, I think about the thing with music, and, you know, think about Phil from Pantera. At one point, Eric Clapton was got on a big kick of Britain for whites only type of thing. He associated himself with some conservative politicians that, you know, were trying to get non-white, you know, keep Britain white. And he was like making statements at concerts. And I'm like, this is Eric Clapton, who every musician he admired was a black guy.
Yeah.
You know, and that was in the 70s. And that's something that was like never really spoke. I only found out about that recently. I want to say within the past year, I read some stuff about that. And I had never heard that brought up. I hear about, you know, you hear about Clapton with cocaine, you hear about Clapton with the kid dying. And I don't think I had ever heard anything about this. And I was completely taken aback by it, because he's Eric Clapton and he loves Chuck Berry and B.B. King and Robert Johnson and Blind Lemon and all these blues guys, all these black blues guys. And it's like, at one point, Eric Clapton was a white supremacist. Well, he was a musician. You know, well, he was a blues guy. How do you be a racist blues guy?
How does that work?
But because it was something I kind of found out, it was like historic, and I guess he's, you know, and maybe it was the drugs, maybe it was the drinking that he just got, you know, and whoever he was hanging out with. And because it's history, and it's history that's rarely brought up, it doesn't affect me, I guess, the same as it happening right then and there. You know, I've had, you know, and this is different, I guess, but sometimes when you find out the political opinions of musicians or actors, you know, if it's something you don't agree with, you know, people are like, you know, my wife's uncle said something recently about, I used to love De Niro, but he's such a liberal now. I can't, you know, I can't stand him. And I'm like, I don't know. All right. Is he, you know, it's like, and then I took a shot. He goes, all these actors are like that. And I said, yeah, you know, like Bruce Willis. And he goes, yeah, you're right. And I'm like, and I only said that because I know Bruce Willis is like a staunch conservative.
Yeah.
And, you know, Bruce Willis has, you know, whatever side I guess you're on, whether, you know, Republican, Democrat, however you feel about it, you know, it's like, do you really care what the guy, you know, if the guy's making a good movie, do you really care how he feels, you know, what his political views are? If it's not, you know, if he's not all the time shouting about it. Yeah. Like, you can take that same thing and then you turn it over to Ted Nugent, who is a guy who has, his songs are all about hanging out and sex. You know, it's all double entendre sex songs. And then you listen to him talk and he's Mr. moral majority, upright citizen. He has very conservative views towards some things, but if he's going to have sex with a 14-year-old girl, that apparently is okay.
Yeah.
Nugent is a guy who I guess he's gotten so far into politics now. I've started to like his music less because he hasn't put out a song. I can't. The newest Ted Nugent stuff I think about is like "Damn Yankees," and that was almost 30 years ago.
I know.
And now he's gone from being a guy. It's like here's Ted Nugent, a guy that used to make music. And there were things that Ted Nugent said when Ted Nugent was kind of defending the rights of hunters and defending the rights of gun owners. I could definitely side with him. And now I just see Ted Nugent just kind of being this buffoon, getting up there and shouting out ideologies. And then on the other side of the coin, you got guys like oh shit, I'm not gonna remember his name. Saturday Night Live, original Saturday Night Live. He ran for Senate in Minnesota.
Al Franken.
Al Franken. Al Franken, a guy whose comedy I had loved for years, and then he just got so far into the political stuff that I was like, I can't. You're not that guy anymore. You used to be a comedian, and now you're this politician. But at least Al Franken kind of put his money where his mouth is. Another guy that I liked, and he got so political, was Dennis Miller.
Yeah,
that things changed so much for him. A guy whose music I like, but every time I hear him talk, I just hate everything he says. Is Michael Stipe from REM. And I
like REM, but I just kind of at times I just kind of want Michael Stipe to just shut up.
Yeah, shut up and sing. Is that
just sing? Just get up there and sing about shiny happy people, and
and some people have sung political song. Have had politics kind of in their music, and then if they want to talk about it, like Springsteen has always been kind of he's kind of had these folk songs, and he's kind of had a message. And you get some, in music you won't tend to get a conservative message more in country music.
Yeah.
I do think it's funny though that some of the Southern rock guys that like Charlie Daniels, who used to have a toke and a drink and all that stuff, and his songs now has changed the lyrics. So, taking the pot smoking out of his music because it doesn't fit his ideologies now.
Yeah.
And I guess people always get older, and that's, you get different changes and opinions in your life. And I guess it can affect who's gonna enjoy what you put out entertainment wise.
Yeah.
I guess you kind of become your own corporation in that sense. Mel Gibson is another prime example of one of those guys that you enjoy for so long, and then he goes on these drunken tirades, or you get a recording of him screaming at his ex-wife sounding like a maniac.
Yeah.
And it's like, I always wanted to like Mel Gibson, and it turns out he's a raving lunatic. Alec Baldwin is another one of those guys who, there's, and again, with some of these people, it's stuff from their private life that's gotten out to us that maybe we shouldn't have seen. And, if you followed everybody you knew around all the time and heard the recordings of people that have been your friends for years, when they're having an argument with somebody, you'd be like, oh my God, he's a complete asshole. But that's just in that moment.
Yeah.
I was watching Oscar movies all weekend, trying to prepare myself for the Oscars. And one of the things I watched was the Amy Winehouse documentary that's just called Amy.
Okay.
And that's another example. That gave me another example of watching it, and there's a ton of her music in it, and you hear her voice, and you hear somebody who was so talented, and even at a young age, they had stuff of her like 16 and 18 years old singing, and you're like, holy shit, she's got this old soul voice. You know, she sounds like somebody who's been singing music, you know, that's 48 years old. And, you know, here's this young girl singing it. And this doc, they had so much footage of her. It was a lot of recordings of, you know, video recordings of her in concert or just with friends. And you see her deteriorate. And you see her bounce back, and you see her deteriorate again, and kind of until the end. And that's a different type of disappointing, because you feel like if somebody, if they're at the right point in time, somebody stepped in, or the right decision was made, you know, it's just wasted talent. You know, somebody like Amy Winehouse or Jimi Hendrix or Jim Morrison, or those musicians that die young, you're like mad at them for, I guess, leaving and not giving you, you know, not, I guess it's a selfish point of view to a point, but they, but also it's not like they committed suicide. It was reckless behavior to a point. You know, it's one thing to enjoy yourself. The interesting thing that I learned from this Amy Winehouse documentary was that she had bulimia issues for most of her life.
Really?
And the bulimia, coupled with the alcoholism, is what weakened her heart. And that's what killed her. She had, I guess she had a heart attack, you know, and doing drugs and doing, but this documentary, you know, where Amy Winehouse being somebody that I was kind of disappointed in her for letting that stuff happen to her, that she's gone now and there's not going to be any more albums. With watching this, and you see the people that were around her and some of the people that kind of had her ear, I guess, that were selfish in wanting to get something out of her. You know, she had her boyfriend / husband who was a drug addict, who it just seemed like the general consensus was he was a major point in ruining her life. The other one that was really kind of upsetting in that was her father really just kind of felt like he had an opportunity to make money off of her. He was shooting a British reality show called something like Being Amy's Dad or something.
Okay.
And he followed her around with cameras. And it was just sad to see. You know, and she had different... I think there was an agent that seemed a little shady. There was an agent that she had that really looked out for her, and then she kind of went with a different agent that, oh, we'll get her back out on tour and we can make $1 million a show. So the dollar sign showed up in a lot of people's eyes, and they just kind of kept putting her out there, and she didn't deal with it well. And she coped with it by drinking and and doing drugs and the bulimia and trying to keep it up an appearance. And it just wore on her. And to watch this, and they would show you these clips of footage, and they would put the dates up for it. And you would just see her go from looking very glamorous at some show to looking like a pile of warm shit, you know, a couple of days later.
Yeah.
And back and forth and back and forth. And you just watching this whole thing, you wish somebody would swoop in and just take her away from it all and get her better. And it just never happened. I know this kind of got away. I kind of went from being upset with people now into, you know, and this took me into a different realm of it. And I guess the moral of the story is, as much as these people are here, part of your life is being an entertainment, you don't know what's going on. And for whatever reason, I guess I want to put drugs and alcohol and kind of political affiliations on one pile of, all right, here's things that are your beliefs or your systems, or these are the things that you want to do with your life that in the long run don't affect me. And it's much different from Bill Cosby, or even, we talked a little bit in the pre-show, O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, that was going to be the next thing I brought up is they're running this mini series. I guess it's a mini series. I don't know, really a mini series, but it's a series they're running on FX called The People versus O.J. Simpson. And there are 2 episodes in, and I think the next episode airs tomorrow night or Wednesday night. And so far, I've enjoyed it. As far as, and that's one of the things that I remember. Like I remember all of that, and sitting and talking with Mary about it. That was, I think that in a way that was the beginning of that 24 hours just got to be in everybody's business, media stuff where, that you couldn't go anywhere without that trial being on TV somewhere.
Right.
And, and that was really for me, that was just the beginning of like seeing a celebrity that was the first time, like, I think we as kids really saw a celebrity fall. And at that point, we weren't really even kids anymore. We were, probably mid to late teens at that point. But, you had this guy with this squeaky clean image of, the Juice that committed this horrible murder. And then you start finding out all this stuff of, that he would, all the domestic stuff, and just that he wasn't what he was portrayed to be.
Yeah. And then, that harkens back a little bit to that, a different time thing where you're like, oh, O.J. Simpson beat his wife for years and we never knew anything about it. Granted, he was out of football at that point. It's something that has, again, it's completely overshadowed his whatever other legacies he's had. Yeah. If you had taken, if none of that ever happened, the murders, the trial, and you looked back at the guy's career and you're like, oh, he's one of the all-time great football player, all-time great college player, all-time great high school player, or pro player, and then turned it into a acting career of relative success. He never had a big giant hit. I think they expected him to kind of become more of an action star as things went on, and he kind of slipped more into that comedic role. But he would have had a strong legacy as a guy who transitioned from, sports, to sports commentary, to acting, and made it big in 2 worlds.
Yeah.
But it's to the point now that people couldn't even, people knew who O.J. Simpson is, but couldn't tell you what team he played for.
Yeah, we were watching this. We actually caught it, I guess, Saturday night on demand because we missed last week's episode. But it was this whole episode involved the infamous chase, where he was, in the white Bronco and all that. And, Mary didn't really remember a lot of that, but I remember, like I explained to her, because there was a scene where, the NBA finals are going on and there's a producer yelling to cut away from the finals. Like this, it was such a big deal at the time that it cut away from the NBA finals. and it was, I think it was like, I think the Knicks were in the final. I think the Knicks were in the finals, and I think that at the same night the Rangers were about to win the Stanley Cup.
Oh, it was like that Knicks Rockets final.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly why, but I was in a bowling alley that night.
Oh.
And I was never a big bowler, but I for whatever reason, I was in a bowling alley the night the OJ thing happened.
I may have been too, but then again,
Yeah,
I was
but
always
you
in
were a bowler. Yeah.
I was always in a bowling alley.
The other thing and this is a non sequitur towards any of this, but that was I remember David Hasselhoff had put together this pay-per-view that was going to be his big, I'm going to make it in America with my music. I'm having this concert and check it out and find out what the world's been talking about. David Hasselhoff music concert. And David Hasselhoff will still, to this day, blame the O.J. Simpson car chase for the lack of interest in his pay-per-view that night.
Yes, that's what it was. It was the O.J. Simpson car chase.
And that whole O.J. thing was something that just captured, you're saying about it being on, but when they start talking about the show, and it's like, well, Charles Darden, Marcia Clark, Robert Kardashian, F. Lee Bailey, the amount of people that I could just name that were involved in it. Judge Ito.
That was one of the other things. It was like, they're not even saying, oh, this is this character, this is that character. It's like, I'm seeing people in this movie and going like, or the show and going like, okay, I remember Marcia Clark and Chris Darden and Johnny Cochran and, Judge Ito and Kardashian and all that. And I mean, this is kind of on topic, but off topic a little bit too, is they have such an effort to get the Kardashians into this movie.
I heard they talked about that on Opie and Jimmy.
They had like a scene where Robert Kardashian or whatever his name was like reading the OJ suicide note on TV, and they panned to a living room with the Kardashian children in it. They're going, "Oh, Daddy's on TV," and that would kind of like irked me a little bit. Like, do we really need these people? We know who they are. We don't need them in the OJ movie.
They did kind of shoehorn them in there, but the thing is, Robert Kardashian was best friends with O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, and I get that. I don't have a problem with the Robert Kardashian character being in the movie. Throw in, the Kardashian nitwits in there because they're the Kardashian nitwits. You don't need it. Doesn't tell the story.
But you know what? I think it's one of those things. It almost to a generation. But you got to remember, this is all 22, almost 25 years ago. There's a whole generation behind us that could be watching us and be like, "Oh, that's why the Kardashians are famous. That's why they have all this money."
Yeah, I guess so.
So it's. It's not I can't say that it's a dumb move to put them in there. It probably feels forced, but there's people out there that don't know.
Yeah.
And it's not important to the story, but I guess it's the Stan Lee cameo of the O.J. Simpson movie.
Yeah.
Because as much as we can rattle off all the names of these people, somebody who's 25 years old would be like, I have no idea what the fuck. Oh, little baby Kim Kardashian's involved in this somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be interested in this.
Yeah, I guess I can forgive that maybe. But it just definitely felt like, oh, look, we need more of the Kardashian kids on TV.
The whole thing, I guess nothing is really that forgivable.
And like there was like
this.
literally like there was like one part where the mother is like, Kim, be quiet.
Yeah.
They were like at the funeral or something like that. She was like,
yeah, I heard.
Chloe to be quiet.
I've heard this. Yes.
Good God.
Is Raleigh Fingers playing Goldman's dad?
No, not just playing Goldman's dad. Travolta's horrible.
Is he?
Travolta is playing Robert Shapiro and is just chewing scenery. What's his name? David Schwimmer is playing Robert Kardashian, as played by David Schwimmer.
Mm.
You know, he's basically it's like this. The character is like if Robert Shapiro or not Robert Shapiro, Kardashian was played by was Ross from Friends. That's kind of that's kind of the vibe I'm getting. But it's been interesting. I'm definitely going to keep watching, even though we all know how it ends and all that. But yeah, it's definitely something to check out.
Yeah, I've been DVRing it. I've been concentrating as much as I can on Oscar movies, like I said, to see as many as I can before the Oscars, so I feel informed both for myself and for the show.
Of course.
I did get through. I watched a ton this weekend. I watched Spotlight, which is not a happy subject,
Yeah.
but really good. I thoroughly enjoyed Spotlight. I was I saw Room. Again, not a happy subject, but done really well. It kind of fools you because it kind of makes you think it's over halfway through it.
Okay.
Like you watch the movie and you're like, I guess it's over, and you're like, there's like an hour left. Okay, and it's like, but it gets in it. There's two stories that are kind of told with the characters in Room, and I liked it. I don't think it's going to win. The Big Short, which I had higher hopes for, I didn't like as much as I thought I was gonna. But they use an interesting device in it to convey, because there's a lot of technical real estate and mortgage talk. It's mostly mortgage stuff, I guess, and financial things that they will start explaining it to you, and then a character will like break the fourth wall, look at the screen and be like, I know you have no idea what I'm talking about. So here's celebrity chef Anthony Bourdain to explain it to you. And then they cut to Anthony Bourdain kind of breaking down what was just talked about.
Okay.
They have a couple of these scenes with different celebrities to, like, oh, here is model so-and-so in a hot tub. And they just kind of explain some of the technical stuff, which is a fun device to convey some of the things that are going on and to bring it more into layman's terms. It was an art, it was a fun artistic choice for the film, but again, it's a film about financial thievery, technically financial thievery. It's they talk about things that there's a lot of math and jargon in it that doesn't necessarily lend itself to a film, but I think they do the best job they can getting it across.
Okay.
There's a movie that's got 6 Academy Award nominations. None of them are Best Picture, but it has both lead actress and supporting actress nominations. And it's a movie called Carol, which I have to say is the most boring movie about lesbians I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I was so like, all right, that even when they get to the like naked lesbian scene, you're like, all right.
Yeah.
I it was the most exciting part of the movie for me was the guy that plays the Riddler on Gotham is in it for a couple of minutes.
Okay.
That he kind of surprise shows up, and I'm like, "Ooh, the Riddler's here!"
Fantastic.
But the rest of the movie, I'm just like, "Oh God!" I mean, I was almost close to, and it seems like it should be, and I'm sure it's a much better book than it is a movie, but it kind of seems like that. Like it's a movie that you'd show somebody and be like, the book is much better. Uh,
Which a lot of times is the case.
I'm more than not that's the case. But this has got it. I know nothing of the book, but I'm going to assume that the book is better. I said I watched the Amy Winehouse documentary, and The Hateful Eight, the Quentin Tarantino movie. I watched that, and it was definitely different from what I expected. I expected this Western, but it was it was almost like a murder mystery that happens in the middle of a Western.
Okay.
Like it's, in a weird sense, it's kind of like one of those like the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly meets Clue.
Okay.
And I went into, I mean, I love a Tarantino movie, and I really enjoyed it. Kind of was surprised it didn't get a Best Picture nomination. Again, I think it was one of those movies that would have, especially in this day and age of the 10 nominations, it would have got nominated but wasn't going to win. But with watching all of these kind of dark and down movies, I got to the point I'm like, I have to watch something that's upbeat. So I watched the Shaun the Sheep movie.
Which was nominated for animation.
Yes, Best Animated Picture. Oh, actually, before I get into the Shaun the Sheep movie, which was the thing I needed to cleanse my palate after all this, I had watched there was another Best Animated Picture. I had seen Inside Out, and then I watched a movie called Anomalisa.
Okay.
Which is a Charlie Kaufman movie. Charlie Kaufman did Being John Malkovich. He did Adaptation. He does very quirky, unusual, weird films. And Anomalisa is this very kind of realistic stop motion. And it is a very surrealist. It's realistic and surrealist that kind of at the same time, which is odd. It's very hard to explain, but it's good, but in a way that like I only have to watch this once, and I don't really want to watch it with another person. Like I would say, watch Anomalisa, but I don't want to watch it with you. You know, which is a odd way to speak of a movie, but it got some very interesting reviews that made like, so it's a very human movie, and it is, but it's a very human in like the negative senses. The main character is hateable, like nobody would. Like you almost want to, at the beginning, you kind of want to side with him. And then by the end, you're like, what a piece of shit this guy is. And this is Best Animated. This is an R-rated Best Animated Feature with strong sexual content and nudity. So if you like Charlie Kaufman stuff, you'd probably dig this. The average person is going to be freaked the fuck out by it and not really understand what's going on. I don't want to get too deep. It's definitely a film class discussion type of movie.
Okay.
But after watching all this, I'm like, I need something upbeat. And the Shaun the Sheep movie, done from the guy that did Wallace and Gromit and the guy that did Chicken Run and things like that. It's that stop motion claymation look type of thing. And this movie has like no true dialogue in it. It kind of has some of the characters mutter in the way like the Sims would mutter. Like, you play like that. You kind of get that it's. So it has this, it's a universal comedy in the way that everything is pretty much a sight gag. And going into it, I had no idea what it was about, but laughing out loud at it because it was just a fun film. It's not it's something kids can enjoy. It's something adults can enjoy. It was a fun movie, and it had enough of a timeless sense to it that I think it'll carry over. I think it's a little weird that nobody talks in it, and one of the things that I don't know, maybe that kept it from being more popular, but a real enjoyable movie in a classic animated sense. It reminded me of old Warner Brothers kind of cartoon stuff. It had that, not in a way that it was an imitating Bugs Bunny, but it was there were elements there that you're like, this is classic animated comedy.
Cool.
And I needed something like that after watching all the dark shit they decided to nominate for the Oscars this year. And all the intense crap. And it's like, oh, all right, here's a fun cartoon about a sheep and a dog and a guy and there's things. So I was
sounds fun.
If I'm gonna recommend anything, I said the Oscars almost always are very you're not gonna like it. It's kind of artsy. It's kind of depressing. I can say unequivocally, watch the Shaun the Sheep movie. As dumb as the title sounds, as dumb as anything else, it's just a fun, stupid cartoon.
Yeah, and sometimes you just need a dumb, stupid cartoon.
Yeah. And that's what I needed. I mean, there's some good films. I'm not going to shit on any of these things. They don't make a ton of money, but check out some of these movies, and a lot of them have good messages. Spotlight and Big Short kind of bring to light things that kind of got glazed over. Not so much Spotlight is about things getting glazed over and then getting it brought to light, but the field for the Oscars, I guess it's always strong, but it's just been so. I just want a year of happy movies.
Well, maybe we'll talk about a happy movie next week.
I'm planning on it. Next week, I'm going to go see. You already saw it. I'm going to go see Deadpool. So next week, we can come in. We can talk some R-rated comic book action. Maybe
we'll have Jay on to add to our comic book nerdiness.
Our comic book, it'd be good. Jay was looking forward to all this, all the Deadpool stuff as much as I was. So, or as we were. So that wouldn't be a bad pull. You told me you enjoyed it. I talked to a couple of other people who've seen it. I know it made a shitload of money.
Yeah. I enjoyed it from start to finish. And I kind of went in like, okay, I know I'm going to like it, but I was pleasantly surprised as to how good it was. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it next week.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
So I guess that's where we will wrap up. I saw Deadpool. Mike's going to see Deadpool. We'll talk about Deadpool next week.
Everybody go see Deadpool.
Everybody go see Deadpool because it's fucking awesome. But anyway, you know where to find us. We're on iTunes and Stitcher. You can check us out at the channelzpodcasts.wordpress.com. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/channelzpodcasts. Shoot us an email at channelzpodcasts@gmail.com. And we'll see you next week with lots of Deadpool. So I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
And go see Deadpool.